A man walks into a bar and orders a drink. After a couple of sips, he says to the bartender, "If I show you something amazing, can I drink here for free tonight?" The bartender, always up for a good story, replies, "It'd have to be something really special." The man nods, reaches into his bag, and pulls out a tiny box. He opens it to reveal a 12-inch tall man complete with a tiny piano. The little guy stretches his fingers and starts playing flawless Beethoven and Chopin. The bartender's jaw drops. "That's incredible. Drinks are on the house, but you've got to tell me where you found him." The man leans in and whispers, "There's a genie granting wishes in the alley behind your bar." The bartender sprints outside. Moments later, a deafening quack fills the bar. The bartender bursts back in, followed by thousands of ducks. "That genie's hard of hearing. I asked for $1,000,000, not ducks." The man takes a sip of his free drink and grins. "You really think I asked for a 12-inch pianist?" Johnny sits at the bar, staring into his drink, when a big, rough-looking biker stomps over, grabs Johnny's glass, downs it in one gulp, and growls, "Well, what are you gonna do about it?" Johnny bursts into tears. "Whoa, man," the biker says. "I didn't think you'd cry. I can't stand seeing a grown man cry. What's your problem?" Between sobs, Johnny says, "This has been the worst day of my life. I was late to work and my boss fired me. Then I go to the parking lot. My car's been stolen and I don't have insurance. I get a cab home, but I left my wallet in it. When I finally get home, I find my wife in bed with the mailman. I storm out, my dog bites me, and now I end up here, trying to work up the courage to end it all. I bought a drink, dropped a poison capsule in, and just as I was watching it dissolve, you show up and drink the whole damn thing." He pauses for a second, wipes his eyes, and says, "But enough about me. How's your day going?" An Irishman walks into a pub in Dublin and orders 3 pints of Guinness. He takes them to a table in the back and drinks a sip from each in turn until all 3 are empty. When he returns to the bar for another round, the bartender says, "You know, lad, the beer would taste better if you ordered one at a time. It goes flat sitting there." The Irishman smiles and replies, You see, I have 2 brothers. One's in America, the other's in Australia. When we all left home, we promised to drink this way to remember the times we had pints together." The bartender nods, touched by the sentiment, and the Irishman becomes a regular, always ordering 3 pints and drinking them just the same. One day, he walks in and orders only 2 pints. The pub falls silent, and everyone watches in sympathy. When he returns to the bar for his next round, the bartender gently says, "I'm sorry for your loss, lad. My condolences." The Irishman looks puzzled for a moment, then chuckles, "Oh no, everyone's grand. It's me. I've quit drinking." A man wakes up after a heavy night of drinking and notices a single red rose on his bedside table. Next to it sits a glass of water, 2 Advil, and a note from his wife that reads, "Hi, honey, the pills are for your headache. When you're ready, come downstairs and I'll make your favorite breakfast. Love you." Confused, but grateful. He sits up and notices he's still wearing last night's clothes, now wrinkled and uncomfortable. He heads down to the kitchen where his wife is happily humming and dancing around in her apron. She spots him, beams, gives him a kiss, and says, "Go wait in the dining room. Breakfast will be ready soon." He walks into the dining room, still bewildered, and sees his son at the table. "Hey, buddy," he whispers, "do you know what's going on with Mom? I was sure I was in trouble." The boy looks up and says, "Well, Dad, you came home super drunk last night. You stumbled upstairs and crawled into bed with Mom. She tried to help you out of your clothes, but every time she pulled on your shirt, you pushed her away and shouted, 'Get off me, lady, I'm married.'" Dave and his girlfriend are at a party on a hot day. It's a great party. Everyone's having fun, dancing, and enjoying themselves. Eventually, the catering arrives and people start lining up for food and drinks. After dancing for a while, Dave's girlfriend feels a bit tired, so Dave offers to grab her a drink. She smiles and asks for some lemonade to cool down. Dave heads over to the lemonade table, but there's a small line. No big deal, he waits patiently. The guy in front of him, a little tipsy, on lemonade somehow, turns around and recognizes Dave. "Hey, mate, go ahead of me," the guy insists. Dave, not wanting to draw attention to himself, politely declines, but the guy gets weirdly insistent. "No, seriously, go ahead." Dave, now slightly uncomfortable, excuses himself, and returns to his girlfriend. "Sorry, there was a long line," he explains. She's understanding and says it's fine. Still wanting to get her something, he offers to grab some water instead. She agrees, so he heads over to the water station. Turns out water is in even higher demand. It's a hot day, after all. Dave waits and waits, but just as he reaches the front, the water runs out. Someone offers Dave their cup, but before he can respond, someone else insists on giving him theirs. Within seconds, people start arguing over who gets to be the most generous, and a full-blown fight nearly breaks out. Not wanting to cause more chaos, Dave backs away and returns to his girlfriend. "Yeah, the line was too long," he says again. She laughs and reassures him that it's fine. He doesn't have to get her anything. But now Dave feels determined, so he heads off one last time to the punch table. A few minutes later, he returns with a cup of punch. His girlfriend smiles, taking the drink. "Oh, wow, that was much easier than the others." Dave takes a sip, nods, and says, "Yep." There was a boy from San Francisco who loved watching streetcars glide up and down the city. His dream? To drive one someday? After high school, he applied to streetcar driving school, aced his classes, and landed his dream job. He loved it. Every day he showed up to work with a big smile. One afternoon, while driving, he spotted friends on the sidewalk. He waved excitedly and didn't see the kid crossing the street. Bam! Tragedy struck. Even worse, the kid was the son of a diplomat. At trial, despite his remorse, the judge sentenced him to death due to diplomatic pressures. For his final meal, he requested a simple glass of lemonade and a chocolate chip cookie, just like the first time he ever saw a streetcar. He got a $1.50 lemonade and a 25-cent cookie. Not great, but not terrible. Strapped into the electric chair, the executioner flipped the switch, and nothing happened. The voltmeter showed full power, but the man sat there, unharmed. Since failed executions are considered an act of God, he was released. Somehow, he got his streetcar job back, under probation. Things went smoothly until the day he accidentally ate his roommate's pot brownie before work. Zoned out behind the controls, he missed a red light and crashed into a fire truck, killing 3 firefighters. Back in court. Same sentence, same final meal request, this time a 75-cent cookie. Again, the chair was prepped, wires double-checked, power cranked up, and still nothing. He walked free. But now, he'd snapped. He hijacked a trolley and drove it straight into a group of Girl Scouts. It was horrific, 5 dead, several injured. At his final trial, there was no debate. Guilty, death penalty for his last meal. Same $1.50 lemonade, but this time a $5 gourmet cookie, the ultimate chocolate chip. The executioner, beyond frustrated, triple-checked everything. He flipped the switch at maximum voltage. Sparks flew. But again, the man sat there perfectly fine. Exasperated, the executioner yelled, "I've tried to fry you 3 times. What's your secret?" The man shrugged and said, "I guess I'm just not a good conductor." The king wanted to go fishing one morning, so he called in the royal weather forecaster to check the outlook. The palace meteorologist assured him, "Your Majesty, there's no chance of rain today." Satisfied, the king and queen set off for the lake. Along the way, they passed a fisherman riding a donkey. The king asked, "Good sir, are the fish biting today?" The fisherman replied, "Your Majesty, I'd head back to the palace if I were you. A big storm's coming soon." The king scoffed, "Nonsense. I have the most educated meteorologist in the land, and I pay him handsomely. I trust his expertise." But sure enough, not long after, a torrential downpour drenched the king and queen. Furious, the king returned to the palace, fired the meteorologist on the spot, and summoned the fisherman. "You clearly know more about weather than my so-called expert," the king said. "How do you do it?" The fisherman humbly replied, "It's not me, Your Majesty. I just watch my donkey. If his ears droop, it means rain is coming." The king thought for a moment and declared, "Then I shall hire the donkey as my new royal weather forecaster." And so began the age-old tradition of putting dumbasses in high government positions, a practice that continues to this day. A man rushes into a police station, tears streaming down his face. Husband, officer, my wife is missing. She went to help with the flood rescue yesterday and never came home. Sergeant, okay, sir, let's get some details. What's her height? Husband, not too tall, maybe 5 foot something. Sergeant, weight. Husband, not skinny, not fat, somewhere in between. Sergeant, eye color. Husband, brownish, I think, never really paid attention. Sergeant, hair color. Husband, changes every few months, dark brown, or maybe lighter now. Sergeant, what was she wearing? Husband, could be jeans or a skirt or shorts, not really sure. Sergeant, all right. What car did she leave in? Husband, sniffles, my Jeep. Sergeant, what kind of Jeep? The husband takes a deep breath, then launches into a detailed monologue. A 2010 Rubicon with a Sprintex supercharger, Diablo Sport T1000 Trinity programmer, Terraflex Falcon 3.3 shocks, Method 105 bead locks, Toyo 37 tires, custom Olympic off-road bumpers, rock-hard cage, Poison Spider sliders, Warn 10K and 8K winches, Cobra 75 CB radio, LED light bars, Terraflex HD tie rod, Magnum 44 front axle, Terraflex Alpine long control arms, performance slotted rotors, and a Tuffy security drawer. By now, the sobbing has escalated into a full meltdown. The sergeant, visibly moved, places a comforting hand on his shoulder. Sergeant, don't worry, buddy. We'll find your Jeep. A blonde, looking to make some extra cash, decided to offer her services as a handyman. She knocked on the door of a big house in a wealthy neighborhood. Blonde, hi, I'm handy with tools. Got any jobs I can do for you? The homeowner thought for a moment. Homeowner, well, you could paint my porch. How much would you charge? Blonde, $50. He agreed and showed her to the garage where the paint and brushes were. As he walked back inside, his wife raised an eyebrow. Wife, does she realize the porch wraps all the way around the house? Husband, she should. She was standing on it. A couple of hours later, the blonde knocked on the door. Blonde, all done. And I had enough paint left over to give it 2 coats. The man was stunned but handed her the $50. Blonde, oh, and by the way, that's not a Porsche. It's a Ferrari. A man was hitchhiking on a dark, stormy night. The rain poured so hard he could barely see a few feet ahead. Suddenly, through the downpour, he saw headlights approaching. A car pulled over. Without thinking, he jumped in, slammed the door, and then realized there was no one behind the wheel. Before he could react, the car slowly started moving forward. Terrified, he stared ahead as the car rolled down the road. Suddenly, a sharp curve appeared. The man began to pray, bracing for impact. But just before the car reached the bend, a ghostly hand appeared through the window and turned the wheel. Frozen in shock, he watched as the same hand appeared at every curve, steering the car to safety. Finally, mustering all his strength, he leapt out of the moving car and sprinted to the nearest town. Soaked and trembling, he stumbled into a bar and ordered 2 shots of tequila. Between gasps, he told the stunned patrons about the driverless car and the phantom hand. The bar went silent. Half an hour later, 2 soaked men burst through the door. One spotted the hitchhiker and nudged his friend. Hey, Pepe, that's the idiot who jumped into the car while we were pushing it. A man was driving through West Texas one spring evening. The road was deserted. He hadn't seen another soul for hours. Suddenly, his car coughed, sputtered, and died, leaving him stranded on the side of the road in eerie silence. He popped the hood and stared helplessly at the engine, knowing next to nothing about cars. As the sun dipped below the horizon, his flashlight began to flicker. Of course, he'd forgotten to replace the batteries. Out of the darkness, a deep voice rumbled, "It's your fuel pump!" The man jolted upright, hitting his head on the hood. Who said that?" he stammered. Peering into the shadows, he spotted 2 horses in a nearby field. To his utter shock, the nearest horse repeated, "It's your fuel pump! Tap it with your flashlight and try again!" Desperate and too freaked out to question it, the man did as instructed. He tapped the fuel pump, turned the key, and, miraculously, the engine roared back to life. Without a second thought, he floored it to the nearest town and rushed into a bar, breathless and pale. "Whiskey! Double?" he gasped. A rancher at the bar eyed him curiously. "You okay, stranger? You look like you've seen a ghost." The man recounted the whole bizarre tale. When he finished, the rancher chuckled and asked, "That horse that talked to you, was it white?" The man blinked. "Yeah, it was. How did you know?" The rancher nodded, taking a sip of his beer. "Well, you're lucky. That black horse don't know asterisk about cars." A young guy, always up for wild experiments, had a new idea. "I wonder how fast a bicycle can go before it becomes totally uncontrollable." He asked his buddy who owned an old Chevelle, "Hey, can I tie my bike to your bumper and test it out?" "Sure, why not?" His friend shrugged. The plan was simple. "I'll ring my bike bell once if I want you to go faster, twice to hold speed, and if I ring it like crazy, slow down." Off they went. The Chevelle picked up speed, 30 miles per hour, 50 miles per hour, 65 mph. The guy on the bike was holding strong, but suddenly an orange Camaro pulled up alongside, revving its engine. Without thinking, the Chevelle's driver hit the gas, forgetting all about his buddy tied to the back. Further down the road, Officer John sat in his cruiser, radar gun in hand. Suddenly, his radar lit up, 105 miles per hour. He grabbed his radio and called it in. "Dispatch, you're not gonna believe this. I've got a Camaro and a Chevelle drag racing down Highway 3, and there's some lunatic on a bicycle behind them ringing his bell and waving like he's trying to pass." A guy heads to Las Vegas to gamble but ends up losing everything. Not a penny left, not even for a cab to the airport. Still, he flags one down and pleads with the driver. "I'm broke, but if you take me to the airport, I swear I'll pay you back next time I'm in town." The cabbie sneers and says, "Get the hell out of my cab." So the guy walks all the way to the airport, humiliated. Months later, he returns to Vegas and wins big. We're talking life-changing money. As he heads to the airport with bags of cash, he spots a long line of cabs waiting outside his hotel. And there, at the very end, is the same driver who kicked him out last time. The guy smiles, hatching a plan. He walks up to the first cab. "How much to the airport?" $15, the driver replies. "Great. And how much if I wanted you to sleep with me on the way there?" The driver, disgusted, yells, "Get the hell out of my cab!" He does the same with the next cab and the next, asking each one how much for the ride and then slipping in the inappropriate question. Every driver kicks him out. Finally, he gets to the last cab, the one driven by the guy who kicked him out months ago. This driver doesn't recognize him. "How much to the airport?" $15, the driver answers. "Perfect," the guy says, handing him the cash and hopping in. As they drive to the airport, they slowly pass by all the other cabbies who had thrown him out. And there he is, grinning like a maniac, waving and giving a huge thumbs up to each of them as they pass. While the other drivers watch in horror, thinking, "Oh no, he finally found one." A Polish man marries an American woman, and though his English isn't perfect, they get along just fine. Until one day, he storms into a lawyer's office. Polish man: "I need divorce." Lawyer: "Well, let's see. Do you have any grounds?" Polish man: "Yes, I have acre and a half with nice little house." Lawyer: "No, I mean, do you have a case?" Polish man: "It case made of wood. Keeps tools inside." Lawyer sighs. "Okay, does either of you have a grudge?" Polish man: "No, we have carport, no need grudge." Lawyer: "What are your relations like?" Polish man: "All my relations still in Poland." Lawyer: "Is there any infidelity in your marriage?" Polish man: "Yes, we have high-fidelity stereo and good DVD player." Lawyer: "Does your wife beat you up?" Polish man: "No, I always up before her." Frustrated, the lawyer finally asks, "Then why on earth do you want a divorce?" The Polish man leans in and whispers, "She going to kill me." Lawyer: "Kill you? What makes you think that?" Polish man: "I got proof. She buy bottle from drugstore, put in bathroom." Lawyer: "What bottle?" Polish man: "It say right on label, Polish remover." One night, an old man accidentally bumped into his daughter-in-law in the dark. In the confusion, he fumbled and accidentally pressed against her chest. Startled, the daughter-in-law shouted, "What are you doing? Don't you have any shame?" Embarrassed, the old man stammered, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought it was your mother-in-law." She glared at him and fired back, "Really? You can't tell the difference between boiled eggs and an omelet?" Not many people know about it, but There exists a tiny kingdom tucked away in a remote corner of the world. The king of this small land dreams of turning his territory into a sovereign nation. But there's a problem. They lack the infrastructure, the population, and the economy to make it happen. The kingdom survives on a single export, thanks to its proximity to some of the richest gold and metal deposits on Earth. But without the means to process these materials on a large scale, they had to get creative. You know the saying, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Well, they did. In their own unique way, the kingdom became renowned for producing the finest handcrafted watches in the world. These timepieces were so exquisite that the wealthy would trade entire fortunes just to own one. But only a handful of master watchmakers could craft these masterpieces, and most citizens could only dream of holding one, let alone owning it. Seeing this, the kind-hearted king decided to change that. He summoned the most skilled watchmaker in the land and gave him a special commission. Create a watch unlike any other. A timepiece so valuable that it transcends money itself. A watch that belongs not to me, but to the people. The watchmaker worked tirelessly, pouring his soul into the creation. When the masterpiece was finally revealed to the nation, the crowd erupted in applause. The king raised the watch high and made a surprising declaration. This watch belongs to all of you. From this day forward, anyone who feels I have ruled unfairly may wear this watch and speak to me as an equal. With this, your voice will always be heard. The people were overjoyed. The watch became a powerful symbol of fairness and truth in the kingdom. Anyone who wore it could stand before the king and challenge his decisions without fear. And so it became known as the "Don't Believe Me, Just Watch." One day, while on patrol, a police officer pulled over a flashy red sports car for speeding. He walked up to the driver's window and was immediately struck. There sat a stunning blonde, blue eyes sparkling, looking as innocent as can be. Officer: "Ma'am, I pulled you over for speeding. May I see your driver's license?" Blonde: "Driver's license. What's that?" The officer sighed. "It's a small card, usually kept in your wallet." She fumbled through her purse and after a minute handed over the license. Officer: "Now, could I see your registration?" Blonde: "Registration? What's that?" "It's usually in your glove compartment," the officer replied, trying to stay patient. She dug around, eventually handing over the registration. The officer returned to his patrol car and called dispatch. "Officer, I've got a blonde here in a red sports car, license and registration in hand, but she seems a little confused." Dispatcher: "Is she drop-dead gorgeous?" Officer: Yeah." Dispatcher: "Okay, here's what you do. Go back to her car, hand her the documents, and then drop your pants." Officer: "What? I can't do that. That's completely inappropriate." Dispatcher: "Trust me, just do it." Reluctantly, the officer walked back, handed her the documents, and then, gulp, dropped his pants. The blonde looked down, rolled her eyes, and sighed. Blonde: not another breathalyzer." A man settles into his window seat on a plane when another man arrives, seating himself next to him with a black Labrador retriever sitting calmly between them. The first man glances at the dog, puzzled. Why is there a dog on the plane?" The second man replies, "I'm a DEA agent. This is Sniffer, the best drug detection dog there is. I'll show you once we're airborne." Intrigued, the first man nods. Once the plane levels out, the agent leans over and says, "Watch this." He signals to Sniffer, "Search!" The dog jumps down and strolls up the aisle, sniffing passengers. After a moment, Sniffer sits purposefully next to a woman, then returns to his handler and taps one paw on the agent's arm. "That woman's carrying marijuana," the agent says, jotting down her seat number. "The authorities will pick her up when we land." "That's incredible," says the first man. The agent sends Sniffer out again. This time, the dog sits beside a man briefly, then returns and places two paws on the agent's arm. "Cocaine," the agent whispers. "This dog's never wrong." The first man is amazed. The agent sends Sniffer one more time. The dog sniffs along the aisles, but then suddenly bolts back, jumps into the middle seat, and starts freaking out, whining, scratching, and then poops all over the seat. The first man leaps back in horror. "What the hell? I thought he was well trained." The agent, pale and sweating, gulps. That means he just found a bomb. A man goes in for a job interview as a TV news broadcaster. The interview goes well, except for one glaring issue. He keeps winking uncontrollably at the camera. The interviewer finally says, "Look, you've got the skills we need, but the winking is a problem. We can't hire you unless you can get that under control." The man replies, "Oh, that's easy. If I take a couple of aspirin, the winking stops for hours. Plenty of time to do a broadcast." "All right," the interviewer says. "Prove it." The man reaches into his pocket. First, his right pocket. He pulls out handfuls of condoms, every size, color, and variety imaginable, but no aspirin. Flustered, he digs into his left pocket. More condoms spill out until he finally pulls out a pack of aspirin. He swallows 2 pills, and sure enough, the winking stops. The interviewer, still wide-eyed from the condom explosion, says, "Well, the winking's fixed, but I don't think we can hire a womanizer. We've had too many harassment issues." The man throws up his hands. "What? I'm happily married. I'm not a womanizer." "Then how do you explain all the condoms?" The interviewer asks. The man sighs. "Have you ever gone into a pharmacy, asked for aspirin, while winking the whole time?" A girl invites her boyfriend over for dinner to meet her parents. "After dinner," she says shyly, "I'd like us to, make love for the first time." The boy is over the moon, but since he's never done this before, he heads to the pharmacy to get some protection. The pharmacist spends nearly an hour explaining everything about condoms and safe sex. At the register, he asks, "So, how many would you like? A 3-pack, 10-pack, or the family pack?" The boy, feeling ambitious, says, "Family pack, I'm going to be busy tonight." That evening, he arrives at the girl's house, nervous but excited. She greets him at the door. "I'm so happy you're here. Come meet my parents." They sit at the dinner table, and the boy quickly offers, "Mind if I say grace?" He bows his head. A minute passes, then 5, then 10. He's still deep in prayer. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes, the girl leans over and whispers, "I didn't know you were this religious." The boy whispers back, "I didn't know your dad was the pharmacist." Mr. Johnson had been retired for a year when his wife of 50 years made a suggestion. "Wife, honey, let's take a cruise. Just the 2 of us for a week, like when we were young. We can make wild love every night." Mr. Johnson smiled, thought about it, and agreed. He grabbed his hat and headed to the pharmacy, where he bought a bottle of seasick pills and a box of condoms. When he got home, his wife said, "You know what? A week isn't enough. Let's go for a month." Back to the pharmacy he went, returning with 12 bottles of seasick pills and another box of condoms. But when he got home again, she grinned and said, "Why not go big? Let's cruise the world." So once more, Mr. Johnson trudged to the pharmacy, this time placing 297 bottles of seasick pills and a big box of condoms on the counter. The pharmacist, who had known him for over 30 years, couldn't hold back any longer. "Pharmacist, Mr. Johnson, I don't mean to pry, but if it makes you that sick, why the heck do you do it?" Jane was a first-time contestant on the $65,000 quiz show. Luck was on her side. She'd taken a huge lead and won the game, but time ran out before the host could ask her the big final question. She agreed to return the next day. On the drive home, Jane was a bundle of nerves. "Jane, I've got to win tomorrow. I wish I knew the question already. I'm so stressed. I won't sleep a wink and I'll look awful on TV." Roger, "Relax, honey, it'll be fine." But an hour after they got home, Roger grabbed his car keys. "Jane, where are you going?" Roger, "I've got an errand. I'll be back soon." 3 hours later, Roger returned, grinning ear to ear. Roger, "Good news. I found out tomorrow's question and the answer." Jane, "Seriously? What is it?" Roger, "The question is, what are the 3 main parts of the male anatomy? The answer is the head, the heart, and the penis." Jane was thrilled and practiced all night. Roger quizzed her at 3 a.m. and again at breakfast, making sure she had it locked in. The next day, Jane was back on the set. Her heart pounded as the host read the big question. Host: Jane, for $65,000, what are the 3 main parts of the male anatomy? You have 10 seconds. Jane: the head? Host: correct, 6 seconds left. Jane: the heart! Host: yes, 4 seconds. Jane: oh no, I know this. My husband drilled it into me all night, and I had it on the tip of my tongue this morning. The audience roared with laughter. Host, grinning: that's close enough! Congratulations, Jane! You just won $65,000!